Welcome back to Directions, Please. Today I have a very special guest, my husband, Dennis.
Hello.
We wanted to come to you today. Obviously, this is not an area of our house where I worry a lot about clutter, because it isn't clutter. We have been enjoying gaming as a family for the past couple of years. Obviously, it has kind of taken off and become a pretty huge hobby for us. And with Valentine's Day coming, we thought it would be a lot of fun to share with you some of our favorite games, specifically designed for 2 players. As we start, I thought it might be fun to do a quick intro of how we got into the hobby of gaming. And as we were kind of preparing for the video and talking, I didn't remember that it was actually me, apparently, who led us down this path of gaming. I kind of started us out with a card game and then a tile laying game I had heard of and thought sounded really interesting, and then Dennis really took off with the hobby. So what did you think of those first few games we played, and where did you go for information? How did you kind of go into that rabbit hole?
Well, I think, when we first started, I knew that board gaming had a sort of a renaissance and had developed into a hobby. I remember seeing the Cones of Dunshire on Parks and Rec and knowing that it was a big
That's right.
a big hobby. So when you first expressed interest in getting into it, I wasn't quite sure, but once we started playing games, I just really enjoyed the variety of different games, the different styles of games, the different mechanics that you could do. They're all interesting mental exercises. You get something different out of a lot of them. So that's really how I took off for it. As far as getting information, there's so much online. There's a really good, and it's a pretty welcoming community online. There's a BoardGameGeek.com is really the central repository of information. It rates games on a community rating games.
And I think that was one of the sources that we went to a lot in the beginning, because obviously we do have our son. He's 11 now, but when we started playing, I want to say he was maybe
like 6 or 7.
6 or 7. Yeah, I was going to say 7, but I think maybe even younger, because we do have a couple of games that are clearly for younger kids. But we learned pretty quickly to look at Board Game Geek, because they do a really nice job kind of giving a rating of how hard the gameplay is, as well as ages, and they have a lot of different categories, including things like families, couples, and as we learned a little bit more about the genres that we kind of like, that was a really great opportunity to find out what are some of these top-rated games, what are people saying about them. Since then, we've gone to a couple of conventions. We definitely started with like the Dice Tower reviews. That's another thing that you can look at on...
Yeah, there's a ton of YouTube channels. Dice Tower, Shut Up, Sit Down, Watch It Played, and a bunch of other great ones out there, and a bunch of great podcasts too. I'm a fan of the Board Game Barrage podcast.
Is that the one that you listen? Okay.
Yep.
And I think one of our games you'd heard about it first on that podcast, right?
Yeah, I've a few games that I've heard about on that, or on some of those YouTube channels that have led me to want to check them out.
Great. So I think we're going to go ahead and get into the main content today, which is sharing with you some of our favorite games for couples. I'm going to let Dennis go first and share with you one of his favorites, Fox in the Forest.
So this is the Fox in the Forest. This is designed by Joshua Burgle, who I don't know really any of his other games. But this, of all the games that we have, I think this is probably the one we've played the most. This is a card...
For couples, you mean?
I think just overall.
Do you think so?
I think we've probably played this game more than any other game.
Yeah, maybe so.
This is a card game, a trick-taking game that's designed for 2 players. So if you think of euchre or bridge or something like Oh Hell or Wizard, a trick-taking game, there's a trump suit. You're trying to take tricks with the cards in your hands, but specifically designed for 2 players, which is great. A lot of those games are team games or designed for big groups, and they're definitely a lot of fun. But this one's great for 2 players. You've got 3 suits of cards that go from 1 to 11. The odd-numbered cards have special abilities that will help you in your play. So you might have one that lets you lead the next trick even if you lost, or you might have one that becomes a trump even if it's off suit. So there's some interesting card abilities that make the trick taking more interesting. But what's really fun about this, you play it over 3 rounds. You get points at the end of the round based on how many tricks you win, but you don't want to win all of them. If you win all the tricks, you'll end up with no points, and your opponent will end up with all of them. The points, it's on a sliding scale of how many tricks you win versus how many points you get. So it incentivizes you to play a little more strategically. You don't want to win every trick. You need to figure out, where do I think I'm going to lose? Where do I think I'm going to win? So it makes for really interesting gameplay. Something that you can play over and over again. I've never gotten bored with it. Definitely a great game for couples. Fox in the Forest.
I really like it because as someone who grew up in Ohio, I grew up with my family playing euchre. And so I kind of knew about trick taking, and this idea of like, you either have to be kind of humble and not go too far over and take too many tricks, or you have to basically kind of purposefully lose. And then that middle ground, you don't get very many points. So it's just a really interesting, so there's the trick taking aspect, cards have special abilities, and then you just start to think about, okay, how can I maximize what I have, or how can I get rid of some of my higher cards so that later I can continue to lose tricks and therefore kind of be in that golden bracket at the bottom too. So I really like it as well. So next up is one of my favorites, which is Patchwork. And I have to admit, I kind of avoided this one for a while because the idea of a game about quilting seemed kind of boring to me. I like something that has kind of an interesting theme. It's not necessarily a bad theme, but it's just not an area I had a lot of background or interest in previously. But I'm so glad I got this because I'm a really big fan of Tetris, and this is a tile laying game. I have really enjoyed it because it's one of the games that kind of plays to my strengths and the way I like to strategize, because it's very visual. It's made by Uwe Rosenberg, who also designed Agricola, which a lot of people refer to as Misery Farm because it's a really tough game, but it's one of those like deep story thematic games that I actually really enjoy. And so I was kind of excited by that. But this one's for 2 players. It definitely plays a lot faster than Agricola. This one takes about probably 30 minutes. I think the first time we play anything, we always give a little bit extra time because you're referring back to the rules and making sure you're doing things and really trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to maximize things. But I really like this game quite a bit.
At the beginning of the game, each player will receive their own quilt board on which they'll place their pieces throughout the game. Here I'm showing you kind of how you fit your pieces together, almost like those Tetris bits that we've talked about. So you'll have a couple of pieces of information on each of the shapes that you purchase. On the tag, you'll see a button amount, which is the cost of that particular piece. And next to it, you'll see what looks like an hourglass, and that tells you how far you'll need to move your piece forward on the time board. As you build, you'll notice that there are some awkward spots, and so those coveted one-tile pieces are something you can earn on the time board. In this case, the green player has selected something that will move the piece forward 3 spaces, which I've shown you. Now the yellow has selected a piece that will move her 5 pieces ahead. Because she's passed a button, she can collect the buttons for any of the pieces she's already placed on her quilt board. Another instance is here where the green player plays a piece that requires 3 moves ahead. Because he's the first person to pass that quilt piece, he gets to put it now in that blank spot on his quilt board.
This is a game that's also pretty easy to teach in a relatively quick period of time, so I have introduced some friends to it, and it's just a nice quick play. It is definitely strategic, but you can also kind of chat a little bit as you play, as long as you remember whose turn it is. And I tend to, at least against him, be pretty good at it. So I enjoy winning. I'm very competitive, as is he.
Someday. Someday I'll win.
He gets me on the engine building games, though. Those are definitely his strength. Our final game is this one, and it's called Tussie Mussie, and it's Victorian themed in that you have different flowers that you can arrange and send based on what their significance is. So that kind of reminds me of, if you've seen Enola Holmes, where she's trying to decode things based on like flower significance. I actually thought this was really interesting. I watched the movie after I had played Tussie Mussie, and I thought that was pretty cool. But it's tiny, it's a wallet game, and I had never heard of this kind of game. I love it because it's tiny, obviously, it's small, it's easy to carry, very lightweight, so I can put it in a purse or my crossbody bag. You know, if we're somewhere where we've got a few minutes just to hang out and play, I think it would be really fun for that. It actually came in my stocking, so I'm going to let Dennis tell you a little bit about kind of how he heard about it and how to play.
Sure. So this was designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, who's the designer of Wingspan, which is one of the most popular games that's come out in the last few years. So I know a lot of people enjoy that one. This is obviously very different. It's published by Button Shy Games, and that's what they do with these wallet games. So the idea is that you have an 18-card deck for all of the games and see what interesting mechanics you can make from that. So this one will actually play 2 to 4, but we really like it at 2. It's a tableau building, so you're choosing cards to build an array in front of you. And the cards have different abilities that will help you with your scoring. The mechanic it uses is I cut, you choose, but it's interesting that you draw 2 cards, decide to play one face up and one face down, and you offer those to your opponent, and your opponent then chooses which one to take. So it's a little bit of bluffing and strategy and knowing your opponent, that I know what they're working on. I can see they've got some face-up cards in their tableau, so I'm going to offer one that will work well for that, but the one I really want is face down. Or do you put the one that you want face up, thinking that they think that you're going to trick them? So it's really interesting. It plays super quick. You can generally get through a game in about 20 minutes, and it's something that's been a lot of fun. We're really glad that we got it.
I really enjoy the face up, face down part of this game. I think it's really fun to, not only for myself decide kind of how I want to offer the cards to my opponent, but also try to guess and second guess a lot of times what they might be doing and what their strategy is. And not only that, but then depending on which one you pick, the face up or face down, that's how it comes back to you. So, you can start to see possibly what the opponent is doing, but also if you have a pretty good memory, you can also try to remember which card, that person took if they did take a face down, and then you have an idea of what that face down card might do. So you might avoid then giving them a card that would make that face down one really valuable. There's just a lot of layers. It seems like really simple and like there couldn't be much to it, but it's really cool. I've enjoyed playing it, and we've already played it several times for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope that you will enjoy some of these games if you purchase them for your own family. And if you have some favorite 2-player games that you enjoy as a couple or even in your family, we'd love your suggestions. We're always looking for new games to check out and explore. And also by commenting or liking, it gives us an idea that this is content that you enjoy, and maybe we can do some of these videos again in the future. So thank you, Dennis, for being brave and getting on here with me. This has been kind of an odd journey with this going into video thing, and I really appreciate that you're willing to kind of put yourself out there with me as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm trying to see. Is it recording?
It is. We have
Okay.
red light for recording.
And then I need to push that, right?
It is solid. Now it's blinking.
Okay. It feels so weird to do this. I'm like really weirded out right now.
This is your idea.
I know. Okay. We weren't on mute that whole time, were we?
Oh, I don't know. Does it mute when it? You pause it?
I don't know.
Well, let's unmute it and do this one, and then see. And if we honestly, I think
The practice was good.
I think a second run through of
Yeah.
of Patchwork might not be the worst thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh wait, hold on.
Right.
One of his favorites, Fox. Oh, I did weird things with my eyes. I shouldn't do it while you're on the water. We could drink water. I mean, that's a real thing that people do.
Nobody's tuning in to watch you drink water. I just realized the clock is in the whole video.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, that'll be
I
good.
think it's fine. I think it's a cool clock.
Yep. All right. You want to see if there's actual audio on
Oh my
the
god.
Patchwork
Yes.
one?
So the next game is Tussie Mussy, and this is it. This is the whole game. It is what's called a pocket
It's
game.
a wallet game.
Okay. I hate you.
Do you just want to just say that I got it for you for Christmas and then I can?
No, I
explain?
want to talk a little bit. If you enjoy this, we hope that you'll give it a like and possibly even comment so we know that we could put some more video. Oops.
Make sure you smash that like button. The buttons are the currency,
And the buttons are the currency in
and
this
so
game.
are the worms. And I've never won it.
And I tend to be pretty good, at least against him. In the game, each player will have a grid, and they get bonus points.
Wait a second. Is it weird that now, like, if you could do the edit there, that all of a sudden the lid is off?
What?
Yeah, like the lid just magically came off. Because where the edit would be, it would be all of a sudden the lid would be off.
Oh. We are going to have some blinkers, I have a feeling. So, thank you so much for stopping by on this.
You stay classy, San Diego. Thanks for stopping by. But mostly stay classy.